Welcome to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken. Shep will talk with some of the smartest thinkers in business to help make you more successful in your professional and personal life. This is Amazing Business Radio with Shep Hyken.
Hello, everybody. It's Shep Hyken here, back on Amazing Business Radio with another great episode. Today, we are going to be interviewing Brett Frazer, who is a leader in the realm of customer experience. He co-founded Service Matters with the singular belief in an age where products are often indistinguishable, service matters. Those are words to my ears. I love hearing this. It's exactly what I believe in. We're going to talk about his new book, Your Hidden Profit Center. Before we do that, a couple of quick announcements. Number one, if you've got a story that you want to share, I want to hear it. And number two, if you've got a question, I want you to ask it. Just go to any social media channel, share your story. If you have the question, use the hashtag AskShep behind it. I'll either answer it right there in the channel, I'll answer it on this show, or in my newsletter, The Shepherd Letter. You can get issues by just going to hyken.com, HYKEN.com, and sign up, and while you're at it, get our research, annual research, and we provide that to everybody at no charge. I think you'll find some really interesting findings as well as some articles. All right, it's time to talk with Brett Frazer and have an amazing interview. Brett, welcome to the show.
Yep, it's great to be here. Thanks very much for having me.
Well, I love interviewing experts and authors on the show, especially when their books are focused on customer service, customer loyalty, or in your case, Your Hidden Profit Center, Mastering the 5 A's of Successful Customer Engagement. Great title. And by the way, if you're listening to this the day the episode comes out, it's right about the time the book will actually come out. So just go over to Amazon or wherever you buy your books and order one. And if it's anything later than that, well, then it'll already be here. So excited to talk to you about the book. Now, before we get into that, you have a concept that you refer to as the old way and the new way, and something you have said that, I want to learn more about. Like, why does the old way not work anymore? And what is the old way?
Well, I think, the old way, when I look at this, right, I mean, the idea of the title of the Hidden Profit Center really comes into the fact that for pretty much entirety, contact centers, and I'll use the word customer service in general for support, service, telesales, contact centers, et cetera, just as a catch-all term, because all of them are in service of customers in some way, really have been looked at as a cost center. And, especially when it was after the purchase, it was understandable kind of somewhat to see that, because there really was no further opportunity to easily capture more revenue from customers. And so there was this mindset of, we've got to reduce that cost as much as possible. And over the years, that element of just continuing to focus and look at customer service as a cost center has been looked at, well, how can we strip out as much as possible, make this as cheap and quick as possible? And in general, a lot of that ends up taking away from the intent of customer service and support, which is to provide a great experience to keep your customers coming back. And you look at the customer index that's out there on customer service and support from Forrester, and it shows that it's continuing to reduce. And a lot of that, I believe, is because of that continued focus on customer service as a cost center. And when times of pressure come up financially, the over-indexing of reducing and stripping costs out of that customer interaction, which may give you a short-term improvement on profitability, but in the long term, if you're damaging those customer relationships and you're reducing customer loyalty, it's going to have a long-term negative impact on profitability.
Right. I've got to agree there. Now, I have my own theory behind some of this. I believe you're right. Too many companies focus on the support center, if you want to call it that, as a cost center. I believe it should be renamed, rather than customer support, customer retention, customer comeback center, because that's what we do in this world. Is if we deliver a great after experience, which could include if something goes wrong or if somebody has a question, we do it in such a way that the customer says, wow, that was easy, that was painless, I like that, I'll come back and do more business with them. Now, with the index that you're referring to with Forrester and a number of other research companies are finding that customer service, they say, is at an all-time low for like the past 7 or 8, 9 years. And I have a theory behind that. I don't really think it's that much lower than it's always been. I think what's happened is expectations from customers have been increased. And the reason is there are some rock star brands out there, companies that you and I do business with all the time, like the Apples and Amazon, just to mention a couple of the A's, but it could be the shoe repair center down the street. It's a local business that just treats you so well, or a manufacturer's rep in a B2B world that just is always following up and proactive. And here's what happens. Customers say, why can't everybody be as good as this person or as that company or that brand or whatever? And even though they're trying and they're probably better than they were a year ago, they're not as good as they could be. And therefore, the benchmark is higher and the grading system from customers is higher. I personally, I don't know how you feel. I want to ask you, do you like the way, the direction I think we're headed? I do think we're headed in a great direction, provided even with AI and Chat GPT and all of the great technology that's coming out there. If it's used the right way, it's going to augment, supplement, and actually create an even better experience.
I do think in general the direction is going well for the companies who are truly seeing the opportunity, investing in it well. I think it's a balance, right? I think there is an element of increased customer expectation, as well as a reduce in investment in good customer experiences in some companies who truly don't see that. And I look at it, that element of the transition from a cost center to a value center.
Yep.
Because not every organization has that ability to give direct revenue, but every organization has the ability to create value for the customer and then to be able to bring that value back into the organization. And so that's really where I see that opportunity. And to your point, when AI is used well and automation is used well, it creates great experiences. When it's thrown in there just because it's the FOMO, bright, shiny object to do, and it's not intentionally thought out as to creating experiences that really work for customers versus experience that work for the company's bottom line, that's where we start to get, I think, those negative experiences happen unintentionally or even intentionally.
Yeah, and then there's companies that use technology to completely deflect to anything other than a human-to-human experience. There's companies that have thought, well, we can eliminate that. I don't think that's possible at this stage in the game. I think that companies really are making a mistake if they think that's going to happen. I just interviewed somebody for another episode of Amazing Business Radio who actually has a company that has the capability to do that. And he said in 15 years, there's still going to be customer service agents or reps because the human-to-human experience cannot go away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting. I don't like the word deflect because
neither do I. It sounds so negative, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And even if you're putting them into a different service channel, into an automation channel, you're redirecting them. You're not deflecting them. You're not pushing them away from your company. You're just redirecting them into a different approach or a different avenue in order to get that support.
Right. Until the customer says, I need to talk to a human, and you've redirected them to the point of deflecting them to another competitor.
Company. Exactly.
Exactly. All right, let's jump to another topic, the opportunity to create value that leads to profitability, because you just mentioned, if what you're trying to do is eliminate a support center in thinking that's going to increase your bottom line revenue, I think this is your answer to that.
Absolutely. I think, there's been quite a bit of pressure over the past few years for many customer contact center, customer service leaders to make that transition to helping to impact the bottom line. And really, a lot of that has been, how do you create revenue? How do you create revenue? Some organizations absolutely have that capability. If there's an upsell or there's a cross-sell, or even in the retention space, you've got an ability to directly impact that. But not every organization has that capability for direct revenue. And that's why I said earlier, that element of leading into a value center. And so I was challenged with that a few years ago at Sunbasket as we grew and we were looking to, improve our margins. And there was a lot of theory around how do you create that connection, but there was very little practical, specific, how do you do this at the transaction level? And that's really what led to the creation of the 5 A's of successful customer engagement.
Which really we will get into after our break, because that's really the crux of what your book is about. Now, something that you just said, boy, and now I get distracted, but I don't want to lose the idea. Oh, here's the thing. You said cross-sell and upsell. That is a direct, as customers talk to you on the phone, or you're even involved with a live chat, it is an opportunity, even a chat bot. It's an opportunity when used the right way to upsell and cross-sell. But the companies that don't have that, it's still the call center, support center, whatever you want to call it, is still a profit center when the result is a reduction of churn. Because you can prove, if you can retain X percent of your customers after a support call, what does that do to your bottom line? It's going to be different for every company, but that's the way to be looking at this.
Yeah, it's looking at that customer lifetime value. It's looking at that long-term impact absolutely on your profitability from your customers over an extended period of time, and really looking at that transition from a transactional connection into a relationship that you can build with that customers and really use support. We've heard it from Ritz-Carlton over the years, right? How do you really use those moments to create loyalty and to endear that trust with the company? And those are really those moments where something has gone wrong, that you've got that opportunity to win that customer for life. And you'll talk to many people of, it may be a company that may not be the cheapest company, but if they can trust, they can rely upon you, then they'll keep coming back and doing business with you over and over again. If it's easy to do business with you, they'll
Easy,
continue to come
and the
back.
word rely, that means it's predictable. And
Absolutely.
that builds confidence and trust. All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I want to get into the 5 A's that are in your book titled Your Hidden Profit Center, Mastering the 5 A's of Successful Customer Engagement, by Brett Frazer, the gentleman we're talking to, who has not a Texan accent, even though you spent, 7 years there, you said?
7 years in Texas.
7 years in Texas, and now you're over on the West Coast, but that is a New Zealand accent. Love it. This is Amazing Business Radio. We'll be right back. Don't go away. One of my favorite sayings is that customer service isn't a department, it's a philosophy. And it's a philosophy that must be embraced by everyone in the organization all the time, and that's 24/7. So if customer service is important to you, and I know it is, then you will love our virtual training, the ultimate on-demand customer service and experience training program that you can access anytime, anywhere. Now, the course content applies to everyone, regardless of position and responsibility, from senior executives to the most recently hired and everyone in between. You'll discover tips, ideas, and strategies that won't cost your company a fortune, but will produce what I call moments of magic, those positive experiences, and it will happen at every level of your organization. So go to Customer Service VT. That's V as in virtual, T as in training. That's customerservicevt.com. It's time to get customer focused.
You're listening to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken.
We are back on Amazing Business Radio. We're talking with Brett Frazer, the author of Your Hidden Profit Center, Mastering the 5 A's of Successful Customer Engagement. And now we're going to get into these 5 A's for the second half of our show. I know people have been waiting with bated breath. When's he going to talk about the book? Well, now's the chance to do so. Let's start with the first A, which is acknowledge.
Absolutely. So I'm going to step back just a little bit before I jump into acknowledge really quickly. I think where the 5 A's came from is, I think over the years, because of this cost center focus, most companies have really honed in on 1A, maybe 2. Most companies like, I'm here to assist you, and I'm going to do it as quickly and hopefully efficiently as possible, and then get on to somebody else. And then sometimes, if they've got an upsell or a cross-sell, then they're going to ask you for something. The problem with that get on as quickly as possible to something else is, over the years, we've kind of stripped out a lot of the what's been deemed kind of fluffy or unnecessary portions of the conversation, and really looked at a logic approach. And that ends up with you calling in for support. You get somebody like me and they say, hey, Shep, how can I help you? And you describe the problem, the frustration it's caused, what you've done to do with it, sometimes even what you want me to help you with. And I turn around and say, okay, Shep, can I get your email address, please? Right. And you're smiling and nodding, because one of two things happen at that point. Either you begrudgingly give me your email address, and emotionally you distance yourself further and you recommit to yourself, this is going to be just as hard as I thought it was going to be. Or if you're really frustrated, you can say, Brett, wait a minute, you didn't hear me. And you repeat yourself over again. And when that happens, either of those two things, it actually generally ends up with a longer call than it would have intended to be, or a less likelihood to accept the assistance that you give me in the end. And I may end up either escalating because I don't like what you've given me, or I call back and I shop around for a different answer because I don't think you got me. And a lot of that is because when we come into these contact centers situations as customers, there's usually an emotional need that we have as well as our logic need. And the way that our brains are wired, if we don't have our emotional need met, it's really difficult to move into that logic need. And so the first step in the framework is acknowledge. And that really comes down to acknowledging the customer as a person, acknowledging their relationship to the company, acknowledging that the problem is a problem to them. And if they give it to you, acknowledging that solution that they're giving for. And that really is to deal with that emotional need. Back in 2000.
It's almost like empathy. The acknowledgement is part of an empathy process that lets the customer know, you know what, I am in alignment, and which, no pun intended, because I know that's your next align, but I'm in alignment with what you're experiencing. I feel your pain. I would be upset if that happened to me as well. And you start to build trust and do that with them.
Absolutely. And that's really what it is. It's that it deals with the emotion, allows for that. I've been heard, I've been seen, they recognize that I'm here, they know my relationship with me. Now I'm ready to kind of start moving on to that next A, which is alignment. Right. And alignment, there's a few things. One is aligning on the situation. And a number of companies do this with troubleshooting. Once they kind of get through that first piece, they troubleshoot a little bit. So you align on the situation. That's key. That's important because you want to know the full extent of the situation so you can get to the right solution or solutions. What I think quite often a lot of companies miss is the next part of aligning on the actual outcome that the customer is trying to achieve. Because when you come in and you say, Brett, this is what I want you to do for me. I want you to give me a refund. Well, a refund isn't the actual outcome. It's just a pathway to an outcome. The outcome is I want my purchasing power of my money back as quickly as possible. And if I can align on that outcome, then I can potentially get multiple different ways to get to it, not just a refund. It could be a credit, it could be reshipping, it could be a multitude of different elements. But if I can then align with you on what's the actual outcome, it creates more possibilities when we get to the next phase.
Yeah, and sometimes I think that offering the refund, when somebody says, I want a refund, if you do something right after they ask for the refund, they may say, you know what, I'm really glad I'm talking to you. I don't want a refund. What I would rather have is fill in the blank. Would you resend the product so it works? Would you, there's a half a dozen, probably many more ways to achieve customer happiness without having to give the money back, even though initially that may be what the customer thought that they wanted. That's because they didn't get you and I handling their problem, the charming personalities that we have.
The other outcome, if you do those two things right, is now you create an alignment between the customer and the agent against the problem. So it's no longer the customer against the agent and the problem. It's now that customer feels that alignment with the agent. It makes the agent's jobs better. They feel that they're in a better place. Their job satisfaction goes up because they're no longer in these conflict situations with customers, call after call, email after email, chat after chat, et cetera, et cetera.
And so you said that well. I refer to this as the collaborative approach, where I need you as an angry customer on my side. And as the agent, how am I going to do that? I'm going to do what you start. I'm going to acknowledge the problem. I throw in apologize and acknowledgement is our first steps. And I'm going to start to share what the resolution is going to be. And that's where you get into assist in just a moment. But as that happens, the customer and I become one against the problem. I call that the collaborative approach. And you just have a different word for it. And thanks for reminding me how powerful that is. So next we have assist.
Absolutely. So, once you've done those two things, you're absolutely right. You move into the assist. That's where most companies focus, right? And assist really is, how do I provide the most appropriate option or options for the customer based on the situation they're in? And when you can provide multiple options and give the customer the choice, then your satisfaction with the resolution goes up. If they select the option, they're less likely to be dissatisfied with the resolution and with the overall choice than if they feel that they've only got one choice, even if it was one that they suggested in the first place. And when we've done those first two right, the overall acceptance of those solutions goes up. When we put this in place, we didn't change any of our offerings. We just did these two things, and we saw a 7% increase in our resolution acceptance just by doing those first two steps.
Wow. Wow. Next, we move into, and I like this one. Now that we've assisted you, we resolved the problem. I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to become kind of almost a consultative mode when I start to advise.
Absolutely. And I think if you stop at those first three, you can become a more efficient cost center, right? Your escalations go down, your long call times go down, your resolution acceptance and your callbacks go down, et cetera. So you become more efficient in the cost center, but you leave money on the table, right? And that next step is really that first, true moving out of that cost center and the value center is to set up that space of becoming a trusted advisor to enable and empower your agents with insight and data around the customer, where they are in their journey, and what's relevant to them that you can provide them that's of value to them. And that can be something that's purely of value of insight to the customer, but it also can be things that are valuable to the organization. So if I know, for instance, that 50% of customers who run into the problem that you've just run into end up running into this other problem, and I can give you that insight now and say, hey, Shep, I don't want you to run into that problem as well. Do you have another minute that we can just make sure that we've got that sorted out? It's great for you. You suddenly think, hey, this Brett's thinking about me. He wants to make sure I don't run into this problem. And that minute may save you hours of frustration, but it may save the organization another 10-minute call in the future.
Yeah, I think, companies make the mistake. And I haven't used this example in a long time, but let's talk about one of my favorite retail stores is Ace Hardware. And you walk into Ace Hardware and you say to the rep or the salesperson, they call them associates, I want to buy a can of paint. What kind of paint? They ask a lot of questions. They sell me a can of paint. And guess what else they do? They ask me, do I need any brushes? Do I need a drop cloth? Do I need anything else? Because they don't want me to go home and realize I didn't get it. So this is so important. I think this is where you are. And I think this also ties into your fifth A, which is ask, is that you need to make sure that you are and by the way, as if you're an expert, a support center rep needs to know this customer is just like 100 other customers I've dealt with. They don't realize they're going to have to call me back to ask me about this. Let's do it now. Or they're going to have to call back and ask to upgrade to the new program. Let's get that out of the way now. And if we do it right, we walk away all happier. And so let's jump into the last one because we are running out of time. And that is ask. This is the 5A. Acknowledge, align, assist, advise, and ask.
Absolutely. So the advice sets up the reciprocity that allows you to ask. Now, the ask is situational. If you're still upset at that point, I'm not going to then ask you for some kind of additional revenue, right? I may ask you for some insight that can help us figure out how could I get better in the future or do better in the future. But this really looks at the 4 different opportunities to create value for an organization. The first is an ask for revenue. That's obvious, but that's not always, as we said, available to every organization. The next ask is the ask for action. If you know the actions that your high value customers take, and you can use that engagement to trigger that action, then you're likely increasing the likelihood of that customer to become stickier, to become a high value customer, to download the app, to write a review, to take part in a feedback session. It's also an opportunity to ask for information. Other parts of the company pay for and spend money and invest in time and energy to go out and get information from customers. You've got these customers in front of you. If you can connect in with your partners across the rest of the organization and find out what are they looking for, what insights do they want from their customers, you can use that as a stream of insight and information every week, pump hundreds or thousands of insights back into the organization that they would go out and pay for otherwise.
Yeah.
The 4th A is the ask to create awareness. And this is kind of for the future. This may be an element of an event that's coming up, or there may be a newsletter that's got an important announcement coming. And it could be as simple as, Shep, I know you don't open all of our emails. I don't open all of our emails. Next month's newsletter's got some really exciting information. Can't tell you now, it's top secret, highly highly suggest that you open that email. Even if you increase your opening rate by 20%, 30%, you're increasing the impact that's been spent across the rest of the organization and creating that value back into the company.
Yep. Strong, strong. All right. Those are the 5 A's. We're out of time, and I always like to ask the one thing question. Let's go back to your book. Is there something else in the book, another nugget of wisdom you want to share with us?
Absolutely. So I think the big element on this is a lot of new systems that come into play. You get a framework, you get it out there. It's like, well, great. What do I do with this? And I think the biggest thing, and McKinsey talks about this, adoption of new elements is one of the key failure points. And that usually comes from a lack of buy-in from your constituents and your key stakeholders. And so a key element, and in the book, I've got a section around adoption, implementation, and sustainment. And a key element of that is, how do you identify your early adopters within your contact center who can be those champions? So it's not you as leadership that's trying to convince them to do this. You get the people, their peers, that they have a relationship with, that they believe in, and get them as your early adopters, sell them on the benefits so that then they can help really increase that adoption and that buy-in across the organization. And that's going to give you a much bigger impact from this and any other implementation that you put across your organization.
Yeah, if you can't get leadership and key stakeholders behind it, it's not going to work. This is great information. Again, the book is titled Your Hidden Profit Center by Brett Frazer. Go to Amazon, buy it today, or wherever you buy your books. Brett, thanks for being on the show and sharing all these great insights.
Shep, thanks very much for having me.
Well, all right, everybody, that wraps it up. Another interview on Amazing Business Radio, and we're going to be back next week with yet another. So until that time, this is Shep Hyken reminding you to always be amazing.